Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'll make a motion to approve the May 9th board minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll make an additional motion to approve the board retreat minutes from June 4th. Someone second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Board member comments. Mr. Sultan.
I have no comment.
All right. Thank you for the no comments. Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I enjoyed the retreat. I think the park is coming along nicely. It looks great. Can't wait for that to open. It's a wonderful amenity for the citizens of the county and anybody else who wants to come. But one thing that struck me was, and as we deliberated about this over the years and so forth, was how professional, how experienced Nova Parks is. I think we're in good hands with them maintaining the park and keeping it. I was really impressed with their presentation and what they had to offer and how they're going to manage the park. I think they did a nice job, and I feel much more comfortable now that knowing that they're kind of going to take control once it opens. And second, I want to comment to Kendra, congratulate her, wonderful presentation. I'm always impressed when I've gone through the reclamation facility. I think that's what we call it these days. The care that goes into that, the professionalism, the forward thinking. It's just a superb job. Excellent. You and your team should be congratulated for that. It's something that the county can really be proud of. Nobody sees it. It is in the background. And when it's good, that's great. But when it's bad, then everybody sees it and everybody wonders what's going on. And, you know, it impressed me that you're always thinking the next steps, what's next in the technology and so forth, and how careful you are with operating that plant. So congratulations. Thank you for the presentation. So my remarks, Mr. Chairman, and happy Father's Day to everybody.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo Mr. Kelly's comments. Really enjoyed the retreat and always enjoy the presentations from Kendra. So I won't repeat everything that Sean said, but I echo all those sentiments.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Yutt?
No comments.
Mr. Buffington?
I would echo Sean and Brent's comments. Thank you.
Mr. Vega?
I have a couple of items. Number one, I'd like to echo the comments. I think it's a terrific opportunity to take care of a water resource and be stewards of a great water resource. Beaver Dam Reservoir is that. I also want to commend staff, particularly the three staff members that participated in Loudoun County's Energy and Environment Forum last month of May 14th. Mark was there, Mark Peterson, as was Sue Crosby. And forgive me for butchering the name, but it is Christine Abe Nguyen. Thank you for the assist. These three individuals were engaged during the forum. They talked to staff. They made water resources interesting and Loudoun Water interesting to students, public officials, and folks in Loudoun County that are interested in the environment. So I appreciate their participation, and I appreciate how they are good ambassadors for the organization. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vega, and thank you for attending. Mr. Bonfils?
I would like to echo all the comments before me and wish everybody happy Father's Day.
Thank you. Mr. Moody, is he online? Okay. All right. Yeah, I'd like to echo everyone's comments too. The retreat was great, and there was a lot of people between Gabby, Jewel, Sam, Savita, Helton, Kendra, Mark, Brian, Sue. I mean, it was a team effort. And then, transporting us around and dealing with all the logistics. And it was a great time afterwards where we actually got to socialize. So that was fun. So I always appreciate the annual retreat, and I want to thank everybody. And then one other comment, remember the CIP and finance are flipped now. So that's coming up, right? And that will be that way forever. So etch it in stone. So I'm glad that got taken care of. And then happy Father's Day. And I was thinking too, we don't have another board meeting until July. And I'm thinking 4th of July, dude, it's crazy to think that that's come around. I still can't write 2024 down, let alone 4th of July. So
2025.
it is amazing. So happy Father's Day and happy 4th if we don't see you before then. And that's all I have. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members. I have a few comments for you today. I'm pleased to announce that the Trap Rock Water Treatment Plant received the Virginia Department of Health Optimization Program Award, also known as the Gold Award, for the 5th year in a row. This award is achieved by continuous excellent performance at the water treatment facility throughout the year. So thank you to all the staff who work there and help us achieve this award. At Loudon Water, we publish the annual Consumer Confidence Water Quality Reports each year as a requirement under the Safe Drinking Water Act. And it provides information about where our water comes from, what's added, how it is treated, tests that are performed, information on fluoride and quality evaluation. All of our customers receive notices with their bills by July 1st of each year with a direct link to the current water quality report on our website. So a big thanks to our compliance and communications team for developing this year's report. On Friday, June 7th, the American Water Works Association and the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies filed a petition for review challenging EPA's maximum contaminant levels for PFAS. The petition was filed with the Federal Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. AWWA and AMWA are not arguing that EPA should not regulate PFAS in drinking water. They support the EPA's decision to set drinking water standards for PFAS. However, they have identified the following general objections to the rule. EPA did not rely on the best available science. EPA did not rely on the most recent PFAS occurrence data. EPA impermissibly used novel approaches as the basis for certain portions of the rule. EPA finalized this rule without following the process mandated by Congress. EPA did not allow an adequate opportunity for public comment. EPA did not adequately address water system concerns, including the impact of the rule on low and fixed income ratepayers, and EPA has significantly underestimated the cost of this rule and the adverse impact that it will have on individual water users. As I mentioned, this was just filed last Friday. We have not been provided with more details than really what we've shared with you here. The next steps is that they are going to provide fact sheets and more information, but we will continue to stay apprised of this issue and keep the board updated as it works through the legal process. A note on some community engagement. During the final weeks of June, Loudon Water is hosting 4 high school students as part of the Global Inheritance Leading Ladies Initiative. This 2-week internship program provides young women an opportunity to explore STEM-based careers through education, leadership training, networking, and mentorship. The cohort will tour Trap Rock in the lab and will participate in sessions led by our OT, IT, GIS, engineering, and CCTV groups. One note on stats, through the end of May, we had 2,098 ERCs, 1,302 from data centers, 262 commercial, and 534 residential. A few reminders for you, Loudon Water will be closed next Wednesday, June 19th, in observance of the Juneteenth holiday. The Water Resources Committee, this will be the first meeting this year for that committee, is scheduled to meet Monday, June 24th at 8 a.m. And for the benefit of the new members, this committee is really intended for information items, providing members the opportunity to learn about industry topics and strategic Loudon Water activities. And so all members are encouraged and invited to attend. As Mr. Allen noted, the Finance Committee is now scheduled to meet Wednesday, June 26th, and the CIP Committee is scheduled to meet Thursday, June 27th. And just a reminder, in August, you have your recess, so there will be no July committee meetings or an August board meeting. And that's all I have today.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Jewel, has anyone signed up from the public to speak?
Yes.
Thank you. I will make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
All right.
Board committee action, audit committee, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The audit committee met on May 30th. The audit committees were in attendance. Audit committee members were in attendance. We had a report from Jennifer Files and Brian Newland, partners at Yount, Hyde and Barber, our independent auditors. The audit went well, as it always has in years past. The team, the finance team, and the IT team here should be complimented for their efforts to make sure the audit went smoothly. No unusual findings, and we had a clean, unmodified opinion. So we also discussed which we will discuss later, the ACFR, and that was discussed at the meeting or reviewed, prior to the audit being signed, and so we didn't have any findings at the audit committee, so that went through okay. But we're good on the audit committee.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. CIP, so for the CIP updates and the finance committee updates, I just want to note that we're going to have a presentation that's coming up in today's meeting. So you don't have to cover those in your committee updates. That makes sense?
It's okay with me.
Okay, all right.
Anyway, before I start, I'd like to apologize. I was very impressed with the retreat, especially Kendra's knowledge and ability to present stuff that I actually understood. And I think she needs a special thanks. The CIP committee met. Task order for water main replacement in Oakdale, Lindenwood, and West Ash was the item. Pipes installed in Countryside and Sterling Park are made of old, brittle cast iron and have exhibited extensive corrosion and a higher concentration of breaks. Accordingly, this project will replace approximately 3,000 linear feet of existing mains and appurtenances. J2 Engineers was selected for the project, and a task order in the amount of $126,000 was negotiated with a 5% contingency for a total authorized budget of $133,000. The CIP committee forwarded this item to the board's consent agenda for approval. Staff provided an update on the status of joint partnership projects, which I think is what you're talking about,
Correct.
emanating from the MOU signed in 2015 with the county. And Tom Lipinski indicated that 2024 spending was under projections by approximately 9%. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sultan. Mr. Kelly, Finance.
Thank you. One thing I did want to mention, should have mentioned at the audit report, we did file a single audit. If you remember that when an entity receives funding from the federal government, the entity has to file a single audit if it's over $750,000 of grants or aid or, COVID relief funds or what have you. And that was done in concurrence with the financial audit. Both are filed with the GAO, I understand, Brian, and it was the office of OMB, but now it's at the GAO as of April. And that went through, and we've had 2 years of low findings or no findings. So next year we should be a little lighter, although the amount for relief or funds or grants or what have you goes from 750 to $1 million. So, but it will be well above that. So we'll have these single audits going forward. And just a reminder, single audit just refers to the fact you report to one entity of the government, and as opposed to many, depending on where the relief comes from. So if you have 6 agencies that you get to provide relief, you don't have to file 6 audits. So, all right, Finance Committee meeting. I won't go into this too much since this is on the main agenda, but we went over the ACFR report that was prepared. It's prepared very well. It looks great, really good. A lot of work, a lot of teamwork went into that. Sue Crosby should be complimented. The report looks great. And at the request of our board member, Mr. Yudd, I believe we discussed ERCs, breakdown on where those ERCs are coming from. I think that was a very well done report by our general manager. And going forward, when we discuss ERCs, we'll have a breakout and a pie chart, so we'll understand where the revenue is coming from. So I think that was a well done report, and we'll go over that again as part of the main agenda.
All right.
That was my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
You're welcome.
Very good report as usual. On to the consent agenda. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor?
All right.
Consent agenda has been approved. We're now going to move into the public hearing portion of the meeting, and it's a public hearing on the proposed acquisition of easements within the JMLA, the Joint Land Management Area. And there'll be a presentation by Savita Schlesinger.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to discuss proposed acquisition of easements within the JLMA East area. So just to orient you, this is a map of our central system. The JLMA East is a new area of service for us. So the red star, it's a little bit hard to see, but the red star is the area that we're talking about today. So the JLMA East, or JLMA in general, came to us. We became the preferred service provider in 2019 after changes to the comprehensive plan. You'll actually, I think we gave a presentation on that recently. And what that means is that we have to extend service into that area to support development in that area. So this project is the extension of water and sewer into the eastern area of our JLMA, and it will support commercial, residential, industrial, and data center developments in the area. So it's 20,000 linear feet of water line coming off of Belmont Ridge Road and about 10,000 linear feet of sewer. So there are a number of easements or parcels that we need across, or easements across 21 parcels within the JLMA. We've been able to successfully negotiate 12 easements on 12 of the 21 parcels. And this slide is showing you all of the parcels where we need easements. The color coding is deliberate, so the blue or the aqua color is easements that were going to be acquired by the developer. The green is easements that Loudon Water was responsible for acquiring. That was done deliberately because to leverage relationships that we each had with the property owners. So we've been working on this for approximately 18 months. And at this point, we have exhausted our negotiation efforts on 8 parcels within the Cross Trail Industrial Park, as well as the Starland Park. And those are outlined in red. I think you can kind of see the 2 different areas. And at this point, in addition, time is of the essence as there are currently developments under construction that need to be served by these facilities. So this is just a look at the alignment along in the Cross Trail Industrial Park. As I mentioned before, there are 8 properties that we need easements on. We did work with the property owners to develop this alignment throughout the last year, and it was done to minimize impact to their property along property boundaries, and also there are some overhead lines that we went across perpendicular, something that we typically do with Dominion. So we also offered through our discussions with them to provide stub connections for them to be able to connect in the future. But ultimately, the property owners rejected this offer, and we moved to an appraisal to be able to compensate them accordingly. So we worked with an appraisal company, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to come to a resolution. So the property owners disagree with the appraised value that our appraisers developed. And in addition, I think there is some concern. They say that they've been approached by potential development for data centers in this area. And so they feel like the values that were developed by our appraiser don't account for that. However, these properties as they stand currently cannot be developed as a data center. They'd have to actually be assembled. So since they are not, our appraisers feel that their values are appropriate. In the future, if the properties are sold and assembled, we would work with a developer to relocate or realign those facilities. So moving on from Cross Trail, this is a singular property called Starland. A similar story here. We did work with the property owner on negotiations, but ultimately they had a number of non-monetary requests that we can't really fulfill, things that are against our rates, rules, and regs, or our EDM. And so we also did an appraisal on this property. And again, a similar story. They feel like our appraisal values are low and that they should be compensated at a higher value. We did go back on all of these and talk with our appraisal company and with McGuire Woods, our legal team, and they feel that the appraisals are appropriate and the offers are appropriate. So this is just a sample appraisal report. Marcor LLC did the appraisals for us. We have used them in the past successfully on other easement acquisitions. And like I mentioned before, data center development was not considered when developing the reports because at this time, the way that the properties are currently laid out, that is not the highest and best use of the property. This is a tabulation of the offers that were made to each one of the property owners. So the sum is $463,275. And then lastly, I have a timeline sort of outlining the time that we've taken to get through the negotiations and then steps forward. So we began our negotiations in earnest in January of 2023. In January of this year, we determined that we've sort of reached the point of futility and we ordered some appraisals. In April, the appraisals were completed and we extended bona fide offers to the property owners. All of the offers were declined. Because, again, like I mentioned, there is ongoing construction that needs to be served by these lines. We're now here in front of you asking the board to pass a resolution to allow us to condemn the easements if we need to. This is not something that we take lightly or we do often. So we will send another offer letter out tomorrow if the board passes the resolution and give the properties owners another opportunity to accept our offer. If not, we will move forward with the take and deposit a good faith estimate with the county court by the end of July.
Thank you, Savita.
Where's Marker located? I'm not familiar with that.
Matt, do you want to answer that? Marcor, where's their
The
office?
appraisal service, Marker.
Yes, yeah.
Where are they located?
Oh, where are they located?
Yeah. Regional or-
They're local. They've done a lot of work for road projects in Loudoun County as well as Fairfax County. So I'd say they're pretty familiar with the landscape.
They focus on road.
Yes, they do.
Jewel, has anyone signed in to speak on this issue?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we have this action item before us, which is a resolution, which was in everyone's board packet. We have our counsel here. If anyone has any questions regarding the resolution, I think you can answer those now before we vote on it. So I'll open it up for any questions and or comments as well. Yes.
When you speak to alignment, is the alignment of water easement and sanitary sewer per the exhibits?
Yes.
Okay. So how does that conflict with building location?
I mean, we have seen a very preliminary, I guess, sketch, if you want to call it, of a potential data center, and they showed the box squarely over. So those parcels would be assembled. The footprint of the data center was squarely over those lines. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, it may help if we can call back to the slide that shows the exhibit. I kind of wanted to point out a nuance that may not have been, yes, here. So the sort of north-south portion of the water and sewer alignments you can see there, that is running along existing parcel boundaries within these parcels and is located, outside of areas currently being utilized and occupied by these individual lot owners and businesses. So that was the original negotiation and rationale for our alignments through the property as they are currently laid out.
Okay. I get the one side, like the top of the T, but then the vertical seems to be conflicting with what you just said. So
Correct me if I'm wrong, there are parcel boundaries right underneath of that alignment.
Yeah, it's hard to see it under the blue and yellow alignments there are parcel lines.
These are
Yeah,
8
Yeah, the
individual
red
lots
block is
here.
not
Yeah.
one big parcel, it's several parcels within that.
Correct.
And then in addition, it actually runs all the way back. I pulled up this, so it's following an alignment across other parcels as well.
I'll also add the vertical portion there is co-located with an existing right-of-way reservation. So that was one of the rationales for choosing that location.
That's on slide 9. Shows the ingress egress easement or the reservation.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear you, Jack. What did you say?
On slide 9, one of those handful of parcels is noted and it shows the ingress egress easement coming off from Cross Trail Boulevard. And it shows the 2 parcels, the Gettier parcel and the Leesburg self-storage parcel. There you go, if you zoom in on that.
So I think early in the presentation, you said that this alignment was agreed to by all the property owners,
Yes.
and then now they're not agreeing to it.
They're not, yes, and they're not agreeing to the value that we're offering for the easements.
So it's 2 things. They're not
Yes.
agreeing with the alignment and they're not agreeing with the value.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I just confirm again? I think I know the answer, but the north, at least on this graphic, the up and down, the line that's more up and down is along property lines, boundaries.
Correct.
So they probably couldn't build there anyway because of the setback buffer,
Sure, yes.
most likely, so. And then a more general question, when I was on the Board of Supervisors, we would do this mainly for road improvements. And almost every time, they would wait till we got to the point of a taking, and then they would come to an agreement before the actual taking. Is that the experience you all have had?
We don't do takes very often at all. I think, in fact, I think the last one was 2015, other than the one we just brought this year, which was the unknown heirs. So that's why we're actually going to extend the offer again to try and have another chance at negotiating.
With that offer, will there be, as part of that offer or letter, however you do it, some sort of communication that if they don't accept this time, then we'll proceed with the taking process as long as we vote that way?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I'll be,
Savita was correct. Our last taking was in 2015. I was involved in that one and we followed a similar process. In that instance, it was a single property owner and they did not consent with the final offer. And so we did proceed with the taking.
okay. I'll be supportive of the motion. Thank you.
So I have a couple more questions. Have
Yeah.
they proposed another alignment?
Yes, there has been a very conceptual alignment proposed.
Can you conceptualize it with us, just from the curiosity standpoint?
Sure, it's, so I'd say about halfway down the vertical portion, there was a rectangular, is there a laser point? Trying to outline the building footprint of what they shared. There was a proposal to shift the water line to the east here and then up and back in, just to avoid that building footprint. You know, there's concerns with the timeline to continue to revise alignments. There's also, it's hard to see that the high voltage power lines here. We'd have to parallel the high voltage lines with that proposal. That's not something we typically agree to. It's against our design standards, so.
Mr. Kelly, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. I think I heard you say that they were hoping to maybe put a data center here. But then I thought I heard it said that the appraiser said that's not the highest and best use is for a data center. So it doesn't seem likely that that's an acceptable parcel for a data center. Is that, am I concluding that right?
The way of thinking about it is it's a speculative sort of proposal that has come in at at the end of, like Savita pointed out, our timeline to deliver these services, we've spent the last 18 months working through this alignment. This has come forward now, and as we took it back to our appraiser, they can only go by what the current parcel layout and configuration is. These parcels have not been assembled yet, and that's all contingent on approval processes and a lengthy timeline. So I believe that is what our appraiser took into account when they said we don't see the merits in changing the appraised values at this point in time.
So are they claiming at all? Does the easement do anything to hurt their ability to put a data center there? Are they claiming that at all? Doesn't destroy
No.
value or something like that?
I don't think so. I mean, these lines will actually be needed to develop the parcels, right? So if in the future the properties are sold and assembled for data center, we will work with the developer to relocate the lines at no cost to us. So once they're installed, we need to serve the existing construction, but once they're installed, if they need to be relocated, we can do that.
And as an example to what Savita just finished saying, immediately to the south of these parcels, there's another development, a similar scenario. I believe it was an assemblage of sorts, and our facilities are being relocated as part of that development that came about, after the fact, to accommodate their data center development.
Do these parcels have water and sewer now?
These parcels do not know.
So will they get water and sewer as part of this? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's a benefit there too. Okay.
One more
Mr.
question
Bennett?
for me, I think to the comment from staff about the sort of alternative curved alignment. There's a road there, and I guess your issue is really the overhead electric, but the crossing of the overhead electric is proposed anyway with that alignment. So just to help me understand the discernment in the design requirement that it'd be okay to have it here, but not over there, that's also going under the power line. And by the way, in that boundary follows an existing roadway.
Sure. So we're crossing pretty close to perpendicular with this alignment here, which limits the co-location of the water with the high voltage lines. If we were to go along with the proposed alignment, there would be parallel co-location, so additional linear footage. Creates cathodic protection concerns. It's a safety concern with shock. The high voltage lines can actually impress current onto metallic pipelines. So that's the concern there.
Thank you.
All right, and then we were talking beforehand, and John was mentioning that they do have the ability to, if they don't agree, right, they have other recourse. Could you explain that to the board so they understand that?
Right. Assuming the board passes the resolution, that the next step would be another letter. So the idea, a letter would go out tomorrow from my office that would reiterate the appraised offer and would address the question of relocation in form of our policies, and there'd be an opportunity in the future to relocate at no cost to us. If still they don't accept the offer and we file the certificate of take and deposited money, the landowner has a couple of remedies. One is to appear in court and offer their own appraisal or their own testimony or evidence that it's worth more. They could put on evidence of assemblage if it was legally possible. And I agree there's some impediments to that right now, but they could put on that testimony and ask the judge to increase. So the number that staff has here for your deposit, the judge could say it's much more than that, and we'd have to deposit more. Even if they didn't avail themselves of that right, or if the judge disagreed at that stage, you have an obligation to file the condemnation action within 6 months of the certificate of take or deposit by statute. And there they'd have an opportunity to either mediate a solution, or you end up in front of a jury and a jury could award them whatever they think. So there's several constitutionally protected remedies for them if they're right and if your appraiser is wrong in terms of the value.
I'll comment briefly on it. I think that this alignment, at least from 30,000 feet here, looks completely reasonable. It's following the property boundaries. It's following the right of way. Water and sewer improves property values. If you're in the development industry, you want water and sewer. This land doesn't currently have it. We're paying them to bring water and sewer to their property. If they do end up assembling their parcels, rezoning it and so forth for a data center, none of this is going to preclude their ability to do so. Lines can be rerouted and so forth. So this all seems very reasonable. I'm comfortable with it. I'm glad that we're spending the time belaboring it. Like, I think that's good because you don't want to, condemnation's a sort of a last ditch thing, but I think it sounds like you all have done everything reasonable and then some. So I'm comfortable with this.
Does anyone else have any questions? All right.
That one.
Sure.
Question. In the contour lines, it does not look like flat. So the contour lines to would be to my right of the alignment from the T, it looks fairly steep. Is that correct?
You're seeing the western rim. The illustration.
Right.
And that's probably what you're seeing, a busy graphic.
All right, seeing as there are no other questions, I will make a motion to approve the resolution for easement condemnation. Seconded by Mr. Buffington. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries. Julie, you have the count? All right, we are on to the election of officers. Mr. Wilburn.
As the board knows, this one of the board's obligations each year is to nominate 5 positions. I think historically you've nominated filled 4, but in looking at your bylaws, there's actually 5, so we'll have an extra one this year. But chief among those are the position of chairman and vice chairman. They can serve for a term of 1 year and up to 4 consecutive terms. So we should probably take these one at a time. I'd recommend we do chairman first, vice chairman, then we have the position of treasurer, board secretary, and then I don't want to say new, but for the first time, I think maybe ever, we'll nominate and elect the assistant board secretary, right? I think we've had someone effectively doing that role, but we haven't formalized it, so we should do that. So I would open it up for nominations for chairman.
Real quick, what's the assistant position?
It's in your bylaws. This is the one that we found has been in your bylaws, but have never been voted on before. And it's really a backup for your board secretary, which Gabby has been fulfilling the backup role for years. Yes, yes.
Cool, thank you.
Mr. Bonfils.
I'd like to nominate Terry to be chair.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations?
Do you want it? I just want to make sure.
If there are none, then
I'm willing to serve.
I'm willing to support you.
Thank you.
And last time, we didn't care if you wanted it or not. It was kind of like, hey, you're kind of doing this.
That was true.
That was courtesy of Koblis.
well, it's not,
doing a damn good job.
He's been excellent. He's
Thank you.
doing an excellent job.
well, shall we go to a vote then? Oops, somebody want to make a motion?
I made the motion.
Yeah, I second it.
Seconded.
In second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there an abstain, Mr. Yud?
I would like to comment if that's okay, Chair.
It is.
All kidding aside, I would like to be like Chair Allen when I grow up. Your patience is incredible. Your assiduousness to stick to it and get it done, amazing. Been very helpful to me since I came on board in January. I just want to thank you and recognize you for all that you've done. Really, thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Yudd. And it takes a team, and I think we have a great board. We have great new leadership, and we have great staff. So I think the future looks bright. So, but thank you for those kind words.
Turning to vice chair, do we have nominations?
I would like to nominate Mr. Campbell.
I'll second that.
Do you want it?
I'm happy to serve another year.
All right.
There are no other nominations, then let's go to a vote.
All those in favor of Mr. Campbell as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So anyone want to say something nice about Mr. Campbell?
Thank you for your service.
Thank you
That's the
for
chairman's
his
job.
his willingness to serve with 6 children at home.
I wanted to offer it up to anybody first. No,
I
you,
would like to say
Go
that I found his opinions very insightful, very articulate and knowledgeable.
and I would add to that, that you always know where Mr. Campbell stands, which I think is a good thing. Clarity is key.
And I'd like to add,
Disagree with it.
I'd like to add the word thoughtful.
Thoughtful, yes, that is true. All right, on to the kind of a formality.
Formality, the treasurer is served by the general manager, but you must nominate and
I'd
vote
be
on it.
happy to nominate Brian Carnes as treasurer.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then board secretary, I'll nominate Jewel.
Second.
All those in favor? And then assistant board secretary, this is a new one, so. I had that on.
Nominate
Gabby.
Ron Phil.
Second.
Mr. Kelly,
She's online.
Gabby's online, okay, so. All
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
all those in favor of Gabby Koritsky as assistant secretary, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Gabby.
I
Thank
wanted
you,
to make
Gabby.
a joke about not having an assistant board secretary has rendered everything prior to this moment void, but that could be.
Don't,
misinterpreted.
no, that is. That's,
So we're now,
that's
we now,
April Fool's Day.
you
That's
never know what's in these bylaws till you check, but we've now got it covered.
All right, the last item on the action agenda is a resolution of appreciation for Carla Burleson. And I'll read this into the record. Whereas Carla Burleson began her career at Loudoun County Sanitation Authority as Accountant 1 in 1988 and continued to move forward in the positions of Accountant 2, Accountant 3, Senior Accountant, Accounting Supervisor, Manager of Accounting, Director of Finance, and reaching the pinnacle as General Manager in 2018. Whereas Ms. Burleson has consistently responded to challenges with an ingenuity, imagination, and foresight. Whereas Ms. Burleson has earned the full admiration and respect of colleagues for her dedication, collegiality, enthusiasm, and guidance. Whereas Ms. Burleson has shown commitment, fairness, willingness, and ability to understand and respond to the concerns of our customers. Whereas Ms. Burleson has been an advocate for collaboration among communities, government bodies, agencies, institutions, associations, businesses, and other organizations. Whereas through Ms. Burleson's tireless leadership, the size, scope, and the impact of the authority has grown substantially, including construction of the Broad Run Water Reclamation and DCH Administration Building, design and implementation of the Potomac Water Supply Program, including the construction of Trap Rock Water Treatment Facility and the construction of the Beaver Dam Reservoir Park. Be it resolved that immense gratitude and appreciation are expressed to Carla P. Burleson by the Board of Directors and staff for her loyalty and 36 years of service to Loudoun Water. Be it further resolved that this resolution be made a part of the authority's minutes dated this 13th day of June, 2024. Do we motion the approval of the resolution?
To
Someone-
approve the resolution?
Mr. Kelly and then Mr. Campbell, all those in favor of approving the resolution?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. New business, none. Information items, ERC. This is a, a presentation that we had during finance. It was such a good presentation that we thought the other half, the CIP people would like to hear it. So we're going to do a quick run through.
Thank you. Yes, as Mr. Allen mentioned, we discussed this at the Finance Committee, and so we're going to run through this for the benefit of the full board. So we're going to talk a little bit about our current process and then follow up with some improvements that we've made and will continue to make going forward. We wanted to highlight the long-range forecast that we do, and that really focuses on utilizing the Loudoun County growth projections, and that has been consistent with what we found from our peer utilities. The annual budget forecast, which is what we bring to you in October of every year. We have historically utilized Loudoun County growth projections, and then we have looked at our growth projections as well and assessed for their reasonableness. And if the county projections appear reasonable, that's historically what we've used. And then every year at mid-year, we go through an in-depth review of all our expenses and revenues. And at that time, we will also reproject ERCs through the end of the year. So this is a busy exhibit, but what we really wanted to show is that there's varying degrees of certainty in the projections, and the further out that you get, the less certain they are. And that's at the bottom are your different financial modeling tools, and they're updated annually to account for the uncertainty in the outer years. So your operating budget, your 5-year plan, your 10-year CIP, we bring those to you on an annual basis. So some improvements, you'll see this in your financial summary report. We've added more detail for you. The breakout of ERCs now shows data center, commercial, residential. We've added a chart showing historical data. So you can see how the ERC's growth has been trending over time. And we've added a monetary value to the chart, a pie chart, to show you how much money we're getting from the different types of connections. So instead of just seeing 1,000 data center ERCs, you can see how much money that equates to. And so here's an example of some of the charts. So the pie chart on the right is showing you the monetary value that we've received. And then the chart on the left is showing the growth in ERCs and where those ERC connections have come from. And as you can see, the percentage of data centers has trended up and down over time. And this year, right now, it's heavily data centers. One of the things we thought we could do, and we implemented this in the past at the request of the board, is Davenport, when they do your 5-year plan, has added a scenario of what your fund balance looks like without data center connections. And we thought we could add more sensitivity analysis for you going forward. So we'll talk with Davenport, but some things we thought we could do was use county numbers, see what that projection looks like, use our own growth projections and see what that looks like. And then also include some low growth scenarios if the market were to crash and we were really receiving very low ERCs, what impact that would have on our 5-year plan. And of course, if there's any others that you all would like to see, let us know and we can work with Davenport to include those. And this is just an example of what Davenport has been including. And as you can see, it does, the light green bars are without data centers, so it does impact our cash balance. But as you can see, we still do stay above our target going forward. And then we did talk with some of our other peer utilities and consultants and see how they do their annual year-over-year budget and projection for ERCs. And we found that while they still use county projections in the long term, they're focusing more on their internal project tracking for that yearly projection. And so we got some good ideas from them on how they do that. And so we've decided we're going to incorporate that into our process as well. And so we're going to use that for the year FY 2025 budget and then see how that compares year over year and make improvements to that process going forward. So I wanted to open it up to any discussion from the board.
I want to get clarity on the, Brian, the internal project tracking you mentioned. Trying to understand that.
So we have a land development process and they go through different stages. And so really the other utilities have projections on if a project's in a certain stage, how long it takes to get to that connection. And so we're suggesting we can use that to help project growth for the next year, because the county's projections are more 2,500 ERCs year over year and they fluctuate, but we're saying we can look at where our projects are in our process and give a more accurate determination of when they'll be here. Okay. Yeah.
I had a comment on slide 5, if you could go back to it, and it's as we're using actuals for this, wanted to see what the projections were at that time to see if it was just trends.
Oh,
trends.
What the budget was? Okay, sure.
Whether it was an upwardly trend or was a sinusoidal trend or a downward trend, or to gain a feeling of how the forecast relates to actuals. over time.
I think we actually put a bullpen slide in here. Oh, sorry, it must not be in this one, but we can get that for you. Yep.
I mean, typically we've been under, right? We've
So
been
when we looked back a couple years, in the past, I think we went back to 2015, there were a couple years where we were very close or just under. I think on average over that time, we've been, under by 30%. Like our projection was 30% under.
low, correct.
Yes,
In other
yes.
words, the projections have been conservative.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Bond.
Back on slide 5, there just seems to me, when I drive around, a lot of multifamily connections, and they're only 7%, and that's less than, it's pretty much a quarter of the single family connections. This is in terms, this pie chart's in terms of the number of connections, not the dollar value.
That pie chart is based on, the pie chart's on dollar value.
A dollar value.
Mhm.
Okay, that makes
Mhm.
more sense.
Mhm.
Okay. I was thinking it was based on connections. Okay.
We gotta find out where you're driving too.
Let's see, Moorfield Station, down in going further south to Rampleton, yeah. A lot of multifamily.
Mr. Sultan, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Gudd, I thought,
Just want to say thank you again to Brian for the work. I felt that it was worth looking into, mainly because the square footages that were estimated by the county's growth forecast, which really are being updated right now. So we should see probably a little bit more realistic development numbers coming out. But the ones that came out in 2020 portended a dramatic increase in non-residential square footage across the categories of commercial, office, industrial, and other, something like that. And the office market is very, very different today. The data center market is very strong, yet in Loudoun, the ability to locate additional square footage is extremely challenging and likely will show great decline. The other, I don't know what that other thing is in the market. And then industrial is mainly flex industrial, and there has been some uptick, and there's some new projects coming on. But the dramatic amount of square footage that was expected was probably too much. And so by asking to look into it, I was asking for some appreciation for the understanding the indicators to help us do our financial planning better. And so I really appreciate your willingness to do that, and obviously the guidance we got from Chair Allen along the way. So I appreciate it. And I would just say to my colleagues, if you have suggestions on observations in order to prove our value as what we bring to the organization, say it and throw it on the table. Terry will help you get to where you need to be, and Brian, you will too. So I think that's the right thing to do. It's the right philosophy. Just want to say thank you for that.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think this is going to be a work in progress as we go forward, constantly fine tuning and
Yes.
tweaking it. So I think that's all good. All right, any other questions?
I'll add one comment, which is just, when I worked in home building, it's so difficult to forecast future years of absorption. How many homes are you going to sell? What kind of homes does the market want? And the reality is things change. It's also important to still do it. And so we do it. Everybody does it. Everybody writes out their projections, and there's a table and there's a graph and there's totals. But at the end of the day, it's an unknowable thing. And so just having sort of that perspective as we look out in the future, and it's just acknowledging, yeah, well, there's a lot of uncertainty. Who knows how it's all going to play out? And I think we've done that. But we're in good shape, and I feel confident in our position and in our growth projections and in the work that we're taking to continue to have capacity for future things. That's a very macro kind of view of the Washington, D.C. area, outside of just specific things that are going on any given year. But I think we're doing all the right things.
Mr. Vega, did I see? No? Okay, all right. We will move on to the next information item, the joint county partnership projects, which was presented to CIP, and Amelia and Andrew will take the lead on this presentation.
Yeah, and good morning or afternoon, board members. I'm just going to provide a brief introduction. This was, as Chair Allen just said, this was presented at the CIP, and we thought, this would be helpful for the full board to hear. These joint county projects, they're unique. They're unique for us. They're funded by the county. They have their own set of challenges. And so every once in a while, we brought this kind of an item. Oftentimes it's prior to some of these individual projects that are coming to you for action. In this case, it's an information item just to provide that context. And I think this will be helpful. We had some really good discussion and questions at the CIP committee. So we thought it'd be helpful. So here, and just mentioned, so we've got Andrew Beatty is with he's manager with our planning initiatives in our planning group. Amelia Padel is program manager in our capital programs, and Savita is, of course, involved in this. And so they'll walk through about a dozen slides here and be open to some questions if you have them.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Amelia and I will present a brief presentation on some of the projects that we work with jointly with the county. So just taking a quick step back, we are in a partnership program with the county called the Water and Wastewater Program. And this program was really the culmination of years of prior work to identify communities of need and really present an avenue for those communities or individuals to come forward, seek assistance with their water and wastewater concerns. So back in 2015, 9 years ago now, we signed an MOU with the county, and that MOU really outlines the roles and responsibilities of each of our organizations. Loudoun Water acts primarily as the technical resource for this program, and the county, does the engagement, education, outreach with the communities, and identifies projects and prioritizes those projects with support from Loudoun Water. And we do the feasibility studies, and ultimately, if a project moves forward, would run the design, construction, and ultimately ownership and maintenance and operation of those facilities. And as Mark just mentioned, the work performed through this program is reimbursed by the county. Next slide. So the 5 projects we're going to touch on today, here's a general map and location of those 5 projects. 4 of them are located in the rural policy area, and those are starting from the north, Waterford, then Paonian Springs at the intersection of Route 7 and Route 9. Moving further south, there's the small community of Unison, and then St. Louis, closer down towards Middleburg. There is one project in the suburban policy area, which is the Broad Run Farms waterline extension. It is not part of the water and wastewater program, but it is a project we are working jointly with the county. So I'll touch briefly on Unison and St. Louis here. So Unison applied to the program back in 2020, seeking assistance with both water and wastewater concerns. We completed a feasibility study in 2023, and that was presented and provided to the community. Since then, or the recommendations coming out of that feasibility study were a new community water system and a new community wastewater system. Since then, there has been further conversations with the community, but there are some differing opinions, I guess, within the community on what they feel the best path forward is, and those discussions internally to the community are ongoing, and county staff is working with them, and we're available to assist with those conversations as they try to find come to agreement on a path forward for them. In terms of St. Louis, I'll remind the board, as you know, Loudoun Water does own and operate an existing wastewater treatment plant there. And there is concerns within the community on their individual water systems. some of the county work that has been ongoing recently. The county has initiated or did initiate the development of a village plan back in 2022. And the draft village plan was presented to the Planning Commission back in March. I did reach out to county staff just to get an update on the status of that plan. And it looks like it'll be going in front of the Planning Commission again in September. So although we expected earlier this year that we would be beginning a feasibility study in 2024, it looks like that's probably going to slip into next year. So we're continuing to monitor the efforts in St. Louis, and whenever an application comes forward in the program, we'll be looking to do a feasibility study to address their water concerns.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the members of the board. So I'll start with Broad Run Farm Water Extension Project. Just a little bit of background here. Hidden, see if the pointer works. Hidden landfill. This is an abandoned landfill that has federal and state actions going on. Back in 2008, EPA designated the site as a Superfund site, and in 2020, EPA decided to extend public water mains to the parcels that are in the vicinity of the landfill where they determined the groundwater to have been contaminated with trichloroethylene. And after that decision by the EPA, the county decided to further expand that public water service to the remainder of Broad Run Farms, and Loudoun Water is managing that county portion of the project on behalf of the county. This project includes about 22,000 feet of pipes, 8 to 12 inches. There are 311 lots within the county portion of the project. In total, there are 453 lots in that general area. The county project would require connection into 5 different tie-in locations to the EPA project. And the most recent cost estimate we have is about $10 million for the county portion of the project. The 2 projects are running parallel. EPA is managing the design and construction of their portion of the project, and we are managing the design and construction of the county portion of the project. In terms of status of the county portion of the project, it's been some time that we're done with design and permitting on the project, but because we need to tie into EPA portion of the project to be fully a functional system, we've just been holding on to the completed design. The good news is the county, there are remediation actions happening at the landfill site, and the recent information we've received from the county is their waterline project is now fully funded. They actually have an RFP in progress now, and they do see this project moving forward with construction towards the end of this year, early next year, and we will follow that project. So tentatively, we're looking at advertising this project in the last quarter of this year and begin construction the first quarter of next year. And with the lead time on these ductile iron pipes and stuff, the goal at this point is to be done with construction by the end of 2026.
Do we foresee any issues with easement acquisition?
We're lucky, actually. When we started, we thought we will need a lot of easement on the county project. And I know EPA needed a lot of easement, and there were issues. But our project, the overall system, everything is going in the VDOT right of way. So the only locations we need easement is situations where it basically to address individual property owners. So we do not anticipate easement issues on this project. So the next one here I have is Waterford. Couple different things happening in Waterford. Three major actions. So Waterford, Loudoun Water owns and operates community wastewater system in the community. And as you are aware, based on the recent the DEQ new ammonia regulations, Loudoun Water has a progressive design build project ongoing to upgrade the existing treatment plant. There is this community water system project being led by the Department of General Services. We are assisting General Services through the same memorandum of understanding that Andrew talked about. We are providing technical assistance to the county on that effort. And then there's this third larger infrastructure improvement project, also referred to as Landmark, which is being led by DTCI. That project basically is to upgrade stormwater improvement, sidewalks, bearing overhead utilities. It's a much larger infrastructure improvement project. So the recent discussion and decision with the county is it makes a lot more sense for that project to design and construct the water lines because they will already be doing several other work in the area. So we are in a way talking to DTCI in terms of coordinating this work, but mostly through DGS project manager. So is how it's going on currently.
Question now, or do you want me to wait, or do you want us to wait? It's this one. I couldn't tell exactly what you were saying when you got to the community water system portion. Loudoun County, I can read county project managed by DGS. What exactly do you get is occurring with that project? Could you elaborate a little more?
Mr. Yad, if there is a slide after this where we talk in a little bit detail. Yeah. And actually, this is where I will dive a little bit deeper into the water portion of that. Out of those three projects, I will focus on the community water system in the area. With the known well yield issues in the area, the county initiated a feasibility study, which was wrapped up in 2022. So Loudoun Water and Dewberry assisted the county with the feasibility study. The feasibility study recommended a extension of public water system to the community. And this study was completed in 2022. Now, this study assumed the existing sanitary service area encompasses 145 lots. At this point, the assumption is that same service area would be what will be served by the community water system. Again, we haven't started commission permitting and anything. Things can change. But at this point, we're looking at that same service area. The existing sanitary sewer service area would be the one that this project would serve. The estimated design cost for this project is $1.5 million, and construction cost for Waterford is in the range of $10 to $17 million. The next one here is I have Peonian Springs. In Peonian Springs, there is no community water system or wastewater system that exists, but the community has known well yield issues as well as water quality issues. And on the wastewater side, there is a well-known issues in terms of disposal of the on-site disposal of the wastewater. This one started a little bit earlier. The first phase of study was completed in 2019. There were a couple other supplemental technical memorandums that were completed in the subsequent years, and the last one being in 2022. Now, on this one, there were several iterations of service area, and the one that the county settled on to move forward with the next phase includes 201 lots. This project, the design cost is estimated at $3.5 million. Construction cost $24 is in the range of $34 to $56 million. And I just want to point out, when we did these feasibility studies, we were looking at these two areas separate. So we were looking at local solution at Waterford for the water needs, and then local solution at Peonian Springs for water and wastewater. But then things change a little bit, which I will talk in the next slide here. So in April 2022, Board of Supervisors approved the allocation of $3.5 million of ARPA federal funds to support the design effort on the Peonian Springs water and wastewater project, out of which the county transferred $3 million to Loudoun Water. And last year, in February of 2023, Board of Supervisors approved $1.5 million of the CIP funds for the design of Waterford water system. Along with that approval of the CIP funds, the Board of Supervisors also directed the county staff, now that these two communities are only about 2.5 miles apart, the Board of Supervisors directed the staff to evaluate the potential of having just one system that basically serves two communities. So what we mean by that is finding the source of water somewhere between the two communities along Clark's Gap, and a treatment plant somewhere between the two communities. And in terms of wastewater, taking the sewage from Paonian Springs to the existing treatment plant in Waterford. So that's at conceptual level, that's what the County Board of Supervisors directed the staff to do, joint feasibility, study to see if that option is feasible. So with that direction from the board, we started working with the county on the joint system feasibility study. We hired Dewberry as the design engineer for the project. Working with Dewberry engineers, just the complicated project that this is and different communities involved, we laid out sequence of work that would occur. The overall project was packaged into 7-8 different task orders, as you can see here listed. Some of them have already been completed, mostly the aerial survey. Joint system feasibility study is still ongoing. We are kind of towards the end of it, wrapping it up this summer, we expect. And then the board approved a preliminary design and field work back in May of last year. The next week, June CIP meeting, we will bring forward a task order for approval to begin groundwater investigation phase 3. And then there will be a couple other task orders that we will be bringing in for the board's approval down the road. In terms of schedule, this is a very high-level schedule for the project. So the goal at this point is to be completed with the design and permitting by December of 2026. So the construction funding has not yet been secured. Provided the funds are secured by the time we are done with design and permitting, it's about another 3 years of construction is what we anticipate. And I guess, Mr. Yad, this is where I will be addressing your question of what is happening. So when we so currently the biggest work that's happening right now is in terms of groundwater investigation. Emery and Garrett is Dewberry's sub-consultant doing the groundwater investigation. And again, this is just in discussion with the county. Where we started is they identified 2,000 feet corridor along Clark's Gap Road between the two communities for the desktop study. So our consultants, so the groundwater consultants, they did the desktop study for that 2,000 feet corridor along Clark's Gap. Came out of that desktop study is they identified certain pockets of area in that corridor where they think is the high yield potential zones. It had about 56, 57 parcels in there. We reached out to the property owner. Now the next phase would be field work. Still no excavation or anything, but still field work where geophysical surveyors were going to go out to the site and do some exploration work. So which needed approval from the property owners. We were able to get approval from about 15 property owners, and end of February, early March, Emery and Garrett staff were out at the site. They conducted geophysical survey and came out of that survey. And when they put this thing in the model, they identified 9 locations for test wells. And right now, that where we are is the county's public affairs. They're in discussion to find out how do we communicate with those 9 test. 9 test well does not mean 9 property. There were a couple parcels, the big parcels that there are multiple test wells proposed within like one property. So the county is currently looking at approaching property owners, and if the county is able to secure approval from the property owners, the next scope of work is to actually begin the test well drilling, which means moving the rigs, actually doing the test well. And that's where we are. So the county is kind of taking the lead in that communication outreach to the property owners. And I believe this is my last slide. Yeah, that is my last slide.
What's Emery Garrett using to identify the geology there?
So I was at the site. They, I mean, do you want me to go the process that they?
Well, just, my recollection is they used the type of laser or radar or LiDAR.
LiDAR.
So the process that took place in the field is they were basically laying this 500 feet long cables, and then there were probes driven into the ground. And from a probe, they put electricity in, and then they were taking the recording on the next probe. So they do that like every 30 feet. And when they put all of this data, how long it took basically this for electric to flow from one probe and then for the other probe to receive it. When they put it in the model, that model then tells them the fracture in the bedrock and where they think the ideal location for the test well would be.
That's not cheap. So it's using electricity and putting it down to the ground to try to
Yes.
figure out the geology.
Right, yeah. What they had was a battery and then a lot of probes and long length of cables laying out in the ground.
I kind of like those guys with the dowsing rods.
That might work. Chair, could I raise a point? First of all, thank you so much for that presentation. That was so thorough and good that I think all of us could walk away and when stopped in the grocery store for, hey, what's going on with Paonian Springs and Waterford, give a good update. So excellent. And quite a challenging job. I think the interesting thing is the connection between two rural villages and then those that consent to have facilities go through their property aren't really served. So that's super interesting. But anyway, Mike, when I asked for this type of update to come forward, I was really asking about St. Louis. And so I guess, Andrew, a couple questions for you. When you look at the slide, the feasibility study, I think you said the start of that commencement may slip to 25. And I think what resonates with board members and those out in the community is the substandard level of service that some folks may be experiencing from a water service perspective. And so I think we at the county in my earlier job, I heard a lot about that. And then as that CPAM was moving forward, there were actually several folks that reached out, and they were reaching out to the nonprofit sector and those other interested parties out in the community that might help. And so I think there may be some pressure that we will hear about to try and see how to move quicker than this process typically lays out.
So I guess a little bit more information. I think coordinators have been identified, or volunteers have come forward as coordinators within the community, and they're just still looking to get their application together and solidify that. So once that is received by county staff, then that sort of begins the process in the program to do that. I know also that there was some well testing done by the Virginia Cooperative Extension, where they took some water quality tests, and I think those results have been collated. They weren't to define things at the individual level, but just sort of at a community-wide level. All the samples were brought together, and
if you took the Waterford experience and you said that feasibility took X long, took so long, and then projected out the process that we would typically do as explained in the Waterford Paonian, how would you project that a water system, how long would you project that it would take a water system to be installed and to
Installed,
operate to serve those people? I mean, I know that's a decade or so. I don't want to say a decade, but how long do you think it would take?
It's a good question, and there are a lot of variables that are sort of outside of our control, such as the legislative process. A new service area has to be created, so the work would have to, assuming that a community system is desired or recommended, then a water service area would have to be created through the commission permit process, and that alone could take up to a year. But the design, it'll be several years, a lot of years.
Well, I think you'd like
Appreciate
to think there's some efficiency because we do serve wastewater and there's a service area for the sewer side. You'd like to think there's some efficiency because they'd probably line up, but I don't know if that's, I'm not sure if that's exactly what'll happen. So this is where we get into the roles, and it evolves over time. We are, in a sense, a technical resource for the county in this early stage, and that evolves over time. And if it gets to the point where we're in construction, then we take the lead, and ultimately it's our system. But that's where we have, it's just stay in real close coordination, and it's a challenge to work through it. But
yeah, and I think also as well, it's sort of the community desire, if there's opposition to it, then that can slow things down, and we see that not all communities are in agreement with bringing forth
and that has to do with, we talked about these projects being funded by the county. The county pays for feasibility studies, but ultimately, if these projects move forward, many of these will actually be paid for by the community through mechanisms like a tax district, unless they're able to qualify for additional funding.
Grants.
So that process is, yet down the road.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a couple of questions about the water for Peonia Springs. So the sewage treatment plant we have in Waterford, does that have the ability to take on all the residents of Peonia Springs? Does that have to be?
Not as designed, and the project that the board approved, it does not include, it does not upsize Waterford to take Peonia Springs. So when the county secures funds for Peonia Springs, there would have to be further upgrades needed on that site.
And then right now in Waterford, they all have individual wells. Is there a community well?
In
What's the
Waterford, it's all individual wells.
So it's all individual wells, and Peonia Springs is all individual wells too.
Yes.
Yes.
So it would be a combined water system. And it would be located halfway. The water storage facility would be halfway between the two communities. Is that what I saw on the slide?
That's the current.
Yeah,
concept.
that's the goal. That's the goal. And provided we are able to secure water between the two communities, we determined that technically it is feasible, but with the big caveat that we need to find that water out there.
But practically correct, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we also need to find someone who's willing to let us put a water plant on their property.
People aren't volunteering? All right. Does anyone else have any questions on this information item?
I have just a couple. So no wells have been drilled, so we don't know what kind of water pressure is out there. What did Emery and Garrett suggest from the results of their work?
So again, I want to make sure I tell it clearly. So there are total of 145 parcels in Waterford, 201 in Peonia Springs. It is, they're pretty confident that there will be water secured for some, but will there be water enough for all these 414 parcels? That's to be determined. They seemed to be confident. Again, I will have to see how these test wells go.
The 414 total?
201 in Peonia Springs, 145, what is that?
246.
No, 346. Yeah.
And currently, Paonian Springs, are they on, are there properties on Pump and Hall? I mean, I remember years ago that there was drain fields failing and so forth. What's the current status of that?
I don't recall if there are any pump and halls there, but there are issues out there with their individual septic systems.
Are there like health concern? We had that in Hamilton where we had like effluent sitting in the backyard kind of thing.
I think there have been instances in the past of that, but
That's kind of the county's problem, not ours. at the
Well,
moment.
Right.
we're trying to find a solution, yeah.
Yeah,
for them.
okay. But, okay. And is St. Louis in a similar position?
Not in terms of wastewater, because they have, we have our community system wastewater plant out there.
So they're
And
fine on that.
They're
With the
fine on-
Water, is it a Raspberry Falls situation or are they, how are they getting water?
Water, they have individual wells.
Okay, and the wells aren't contaminated at the moment, as far as we know.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen the results from that testing, that well testing that was done by the Virginia Cooperative Extension, but that would indicate if there were any quality issues. I think the concern was more on yield. There was a few years ago, there was fear of new development within the community, larger homes and drilling a lot more wells that would deplete, the neighbors' wells, and so just fear of their wells going dry.
That's not is it a current issue?
No, that's been resolved by someone stepping in to buy the property and preventing the development.
Yeah.
And that property has what we understand are productive wells that might be helpful in the water distribution system. Interesting sort of interplay. If you have more customers in a service area, you're able to distribute the cost over more people. But if you don't want that, then you have less people to distribute the cost over. And that can be a challenge.
Yes, it can. Hamilton had a sewer service area, special tax district, so everybody paid on top of that. And that was a solution the county brought many years ago. I mean, you probably remember that, I'm sure. And there was a lot of complaints about that. People would buy their homes and not even be aware that there was this extra tax and they're like, what's this about? So St. Louis is fine at the moment. It's maybe Paonian Springs that's having more acute problems at the moment.
Paonian Springs was one of the first communities to apply to the program. They applied in the second year the program was available. So, and there's been a long history of concern out there.
Fine at the moment. I will tell you that some of the comments that we heard from the residents were, I'm only going to run the either washing machine or dishwasher after it rains.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a well situation where you're depending on that, it's that shallow that it's influenced by a rain event like that, you've got an issue. And so I think there were a number of cases similar. And so we were thinking, gosh, you really need to move forward. Hence the concern on the time frame it's going to take to get a community solution. And I do think, when we step back and think about delivering service every day and folks relying on the faucet for so many different things, that we need to take into account those other areas that, they are sewer customers, but they just don't have the benefit of the other side of the equation, and they really, really should. So when you say they're okay, I wanted to just say maybe not so okay, because we need to move forward with a solution.
So, but they're in danger of drought and not having enough water.
And the reliability of the individual wells, the status and quality of the individual wells, the age of the individual wells, the depth of the individual wells. So I think there's risk there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and often with these sort of older historic communities, they're very small lot sizes. So if there was a well failure, they don't necessarily have an option of drilling a new well on their own property.
So all this stuff's going to take a long time. That's just the reality. What are we doing in the interim is it just kind of on the county? Or is there anything that we can do so that somebody doesn't have effluent sitting in their backyard, or they're not going to Walmart buying water to run their toilets or whatever?
For St. Louis, there's the village plan amendment that really will set the stage, once adopted, I guess, for what the utility plan will be, what plans for the future will be. I think you could argue that it's already been clear as day what the plan should be. A water distribution system yesterday would have been the right answer. So as that plan drags out, and even with that plan, folks in the community have reached out to say, how can you help us move forward with that plan? Well, that's another dynamic. But first to nail that down, and I'm looking at the prior Blue Ridge District Supervisor, that once that's nailed down, that will lay out the plan, but trigger feasibility. Feasibility comes, well, feasibility is going to take a long time. And feasibility is going to say, this is what it's going to take to do water distribution system. So accelerating that somehow and putting money behind it, but it did take time to get to the other solutions. And these things don't move quickly, but they probably should. So what would Loudon Water need? Would they need the county to say, we have looked at our priority list and this is what we want you to do first? That hasn't really been the routine.
No, the county, I guess, has looked to, just we're waiting for the application to come in from the community. Again, the program is driven by the communities coming forward as well. So I think that's the first step in the process. At least it has.
I think to try and boil it down, the challenge with this, and particularly in the rural policy area, if these things are coming up in the suburban policy area and central system is the obvious solution, it's easy. In the rural policy area, it's all of the different entities involved. And we have challenges as an authority to move out ahead of a process if they are not our current customers. And when I say that, I'm saying that because the challenge is bring St. Louis or Waterford is an example. They're customers for sewer, but they are not customers for water. So if they're having drinking water issues on their individual wells, we can't get out ahead of a process. We can help. The feasibility studies that we're speaking about are to find a solution. But when they're dealing with issues, drain fields, that's a health department, that's the county, so it's challenging, and we can't get out ahead of the process when we're not in the lead of it. And, that just is, that's always been a part of this. So.
Yeah, I think the county obviously is leading these processes and working with the communities. Like I know in St. Louis in particular, it's hard because we can't write the application for all of this for them, but we can really try and help encourage it and like teach and that sort of thing. But in the end, like somebody has to sit down who may not be able to read and write, or somebody has to somehow find somebody who wants to help do the application and do it in a way that we can accept it. Like this makes sense. Okay. So the county, I know, at least in some of these situations, is really trying to lead a process where we're teaching people what needs to be done and giving them everything we can to get the application submitted. And then once it gets submitted, we move as fast as really the county moves. I think we can move however fast they want us to some extent, and we probably could move faster if they wanted us to. But I think with them paying, it's going to take pressure on the Board of Supervisors from the people in these communities or whoever wants to support these processes moving faster. There's going to need to be some public pressure, or the board is just going to have to take a particular interest and try and move things faster. And to do that, they're probably going to require more money being pumped into these and some sort of prioritization being put forward. But I think it's dependent upon the board and not really us.
Yeah, the first time I remember hearing about St. Louis was when Jim Burton was supervisor, and I mean, it's been going on for so long.
Yeah.
And so clearly a permanent solution is the right thing, but a permanent solution is gonna take a long time, and that's okay. But I was trying to understand how acute the needs are, like this weekend kind of thing. And is there anything that could be done in sort of a stopgap measure? Like, well, this guy doesn't have water, like he doesn't have water like right now, like he's, turning the water on for 10 minutes in the evening, to try to, these kinds of things, because that has happened out there. I've heard of those situations.
Yeah, there was a situation like that in St. Louis. I know we did a study on the county where we looked to see like who's living without plumbing.
Right.
And then we did identify people in the county who were living without any plumbing. And so one guy, they bought him a trailer that he moved in out of his house and into the trailer. They redid his house with plumbing. And then he moved back into his house. That was recently. So there are things to try and identify these folks, and we are trying to, the Board of Supervisors is trying to fix those problems. But it just, everything takes way longer than any of us want it to take, so.
Well, what I'm hearing is there's really nothing for us to do. That's on the county, and if they can help develop some stopgap measures. What was the community where we ran a pipe over the roadway when they were out of sewer, the one right off of Route 7 there?
Yeah.
Potomac
Farms.
Farms. Yeah. I mean, that was just a stopgap measure, but it's like nobody's sewers are working. We're just gonna run a pipe over top of the ground, that kind of thing. But if it's not acute, like if there's not an acute need, then fine. But but it sounds like that's just on the county, so. Thank you for your patience with that conversation.
Yeah, and thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, monthly reports, finance summary by Sally. Anyone have any questions on the monthly report? All right, water resource management report. I did have one question. I noticed there was, we had to shut down our intake. Can you?
There actually happened to be two oil diesel spills that occurred upstream in the Potomac River Basin, one at Cumberland and one at Hyattstown. And so when that happens, all the regional utilities are notified and take extra measures, additional sampling. We chose to shut down and go on Fairfax Water during that time.
So how long were we shut down for?
The first day was, or the first event was, I think, 3 days. It was over a weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I believe. And then we came back up and then we got notice of the next spill. So then we just shut down a couple hours later. So it kind of were back to back.
Did we ever, what are the source of the spills? Do we know that?
The Cumberland spill was a, I made my notes, but now I forgot. The Cumberland spill was the 1,500 gallons into a creek, and I believe it was part of a ship maybe, or a boat, but they were able to contain most of the spill. So out of the 1,500 gallons, it was very minimal that made it into the creek. It goes from the creek to the North Branch to the Potomac River. The Hyattstown was a truck that crashed and 75 gallons escaped from the truck and got into a creek, into the Monocacy, into the Potomac.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions on the water resource? All right. The next one is water and sewer agreements by Huey Tran. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Tran?
I only have one,
All right. Let's hear it.
and it's what the other part C, agreements with reimbursement, other means.
So these are agreements that are typically like license agreements that we sign. Part of our deed language requires a license agreement whenever like a data center fence crosses our easement. So those are like other agreements.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes the monthly report. So we have a closed session that we're going to go into. So that concludes the open portion of the meeting. Two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convened in the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered. Someone second that?
Aye. Aye. Thank you.